The baby's cry echoed through the dark apartment like a small alarm that would not stop. Rachel Carter sat on the cold kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet, a thin blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The room was quiet except for Noah's weak cries drifting from the bedroom. The power had been shut off hours ago, and the only light came from the street lamp bleeding through the cracked blinds. Rachel stared at the empty can of baby formula on the counter. Her hands trembled. Noah had already gone through 2 watered-down bottles tonight, and there was nothing left. She closed her eyes for a moment and pressed her forehead to her knees. Pride had already been stripped away by the past year, but asking for help still felt like swallowing broken glass. Finally, she picked up her phone. Her thumb hovered over her brother's contact. Ben had helped before. Not kindly, not without reminding her how many times she had already asked. But he had helped. And right now, none of that mattered. Rachel typed slowly. Ben, I'm sorry to bother you again. I need $50 for formula.
Noah's almost out. I get paid Friday. I'll pay you back, please.
Her thumb shook as she pressed send. She didn't double-check the number. She didn't look at the name. She just set the phone down beside her and wrapped her arms around her legs, listening to her baby cry from the next room. 5 minutes passed. Her phone buzzed. Rachel looked down at the screen. I think you meant to send that to someone else. Her stomach dropped. She sat up quickly, grabbing the phone. The number wasn't Ben's. 1 wrong digit. She had texted a stranger. Rachel typed fast. I'm so sorry. Wrong number. Please ignore. She locked the screen and tossed the phone onto the counter like it might burn her. Another failure. Another mistake. She stood slowly and walked into the bedroom. Noah lay in the small crib beside her mattress, his tiny face red from crying. Rachel lifted him gently, rocking him against her chest. I know, she whispered softly. I know, baby. His stomach growled faintly. Her chest tightened. She carried him back into the kitchen and tried to mix another bottle with the last scoop of powder and extra water. Noah drank, but slowly, weakly. Rachel looked away so she wouldn't see how hungry he still was. Her phone buzzed again. She almost ignored it. But something made her pick it up. Is your baby going to be okay? Rachel frowned. What kind of stranger asks that? She stared at the message for a long moment. Her first instinct was to block the number. But something about the way the question was written made her pause. Simple, direct, not curious, concerned. She typed back carefully. We'll manage. Sorry again. A reply came almost immediately. I can help. Rachel scoffed quietly. Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers. Another message appeared. Smart rule. My name's Daniel. Now, I'm not a stranger. Rachel didn't respond. She rocked Noah until his breathing slowed and his tiny body relaxed against her shoulder. When he finally fell asleep, she sat quietly in the dark kitchen again. The kind of exhaustion she felt wasn't just physical. It was deeper, the kind that came from months of trying and failing. She hadn't cried when the lab closed and laid off half the staff. She hadn't cried when the bank took her car. She hadn't cried when Noah's father disappeared the moment he heard the word pregnancy. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt heavier. Her phone buzzed again. Rachel picked it up. Send me your payment app. I'll help. She stared at the message. Her pride screamed at her to say no, but Noah stirred softly in the next room. Rachel swallowed. Then she did something she never thought she would do. She opened her Venmo app and sent the stranger her username. 3 seconds later, her phone buzzed again. $5,000 received from Daniel Hayes. Rachel froze. She blinked once, then twice. Her heart began to pound. She opened the app again, just to be sure. $5,000. It was real. Her hands shook as she typed. This is too much. I only needed $50. The reply came back calmly. It's already yours. No catch. One less thing to worry about. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. She hadn't cried when everything in her life collapsed. But this broke her. Tears slid down her cheeks as she leaned against the counter. Thank you. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Daniel replied. Just take care of Noah. Rachel stared at the screen. Her chest tightened. She never told him her son's name. Rachel didn't sleep that night. Even after Noah finally drifted into peaceful breaths with a full bottle, she sat on the edge of her mattress holding her phone like it might disappear. $5,000. Still there, still real. People didn't do things like this, not without a catch, not without wanting something later. She opened their messages again. Just take care of Noah. No emojis, no hesitation, just simple certainty, Rachel typed. You didn't have to do that. For a moment, the phone stayed silent. Then it buzzed. I know, I wanted to. Across the city, Daniel Hayes leaned back in the leather chair inside his glass office overlooking half of Austin. The skyline reflected in the windows like a painting made of steel and light. His office was silent. It always was. His private phone rested in his hand as he reread Rachel's message. Why would you help someone like me? Most people who contacted him wanted investments, partnerships, influence, power. This was the first honest question he'd received in a long time. Daniel typed slowly. Because once someone helped me when they didn't have to, I never forgot it. Rachel read the message quietly. Then she typed back, I want to pay you back someday. Daniel raised an eyebrow. For what? For the formula. For the kindness. There was a pause. Then she wrote again. I'll figure it out. Daniel leaned forward slightly, surprised. She hadn't asked for more money. She hadn't hinted about rent or bills. She was still holding onto her pride with both hands, even while drowning. He respected that. So he typed one more message. What formula does Noah drink? I want to send supplies. Rachel hesitated before answering. Only if it really has no strings. Daniel replied, strings are for people playing games. The next morning, Rachel woke to a knock at the door. Her heart jumped. No one ever knocked here. She pulled on a hoodie and slowly walked to the door. Through the peephole, she saw a delivery driver standing beside 4 large boxes. Rachel opened the door carefully. Delivery for Rachel Carter, the man said. She nodded silently. A few minutes later, the boxes sat in the middle of her living room. Rachel opened the first one, formula. The second, diapers and wipes. The third, baby clothes, soft blankets, organic baby food. The fourth box held bottles, toys, and more supplies than she had ever owned. At the bottom of the last box was a small envelope. Rachel opened it slowly. Inside was a simple handwritten note. He should have everything he needs. No child deserves to grow up barely getting by. Daniel. Rachel sat on the floor surrounded by supplies. Noah slept peacefully in her arms, her chest filled with something warm and confusing. Gratitude, relief, suspicion. All at once, she looked down at the note again. Who was this man? And why did he care about her son? Hours later, curiosity finally won. Rachel opened her phone and searched his name, Daniel Hayes. The results appeared instantly. Daniel Hayes, CEO of Orion Biotech. Net worth, $9, $4 billion. Former military officer. Widower, no children. Rachel's stomach flipped. She stared at the photos on the screen. Sharp eyes, serious expression. A man who clearly lived in a world far away from hers. Yet somehow he had ended up in her messages. Rachel looked down at Noah, sleeping peacefully against her chest. Then she typed one final message. Why are you really doing this? The reply didn't come right away. But when it did, it made her chest ache. Because I know what it feels like to lose someone you can't save. And no child should ever feel that kind of pain. Rachel stared at the words for a long time. Something about them felt real. Painfully real. Then another message appeared. Do you work, Rachel? She hesitated. I used to. Biochemistry research. There was a pause. Then his reply came. Come by Orion Biotech tomorrow at 11. Ask for my assistant. No promises, just a conversation. Rachel stared at the screen. Her heart started beating faster. This wasn't charity anymore. This felt like something else, something bigger. She had no idea if walking into that building tomorrow would change her life or ruin it. Rachel Carter had not stepped inside a corporate office tower in almost 2 years. The last time she had walked through doors like these, she wore pressed slacks, a research badge, and the quiet confidence of someone building a future. Today, she wore thrifted jeans, a clean blouse, and a blazer she had not zipped since before Noah was born. Her son slept in the carrier against her chest as she stepped through the glass doors of Orion Biotech. The lobby was nothing like she expected. No marble floors. No flashy decorations. Just high ceilings, soft lighting, and people working quietly behind sleek desks. Rachel felt underdressed the moment she walked in. The receptionist looked up and smiled. "Good morning." Rachel cleared her throat. "I'm Rachel Carter. I'm here to see Mr. Hayes' assistant." The receptionist nodded immediately. "Of course, you're expected." Rachel blinked. "Expected?" She walked slowly toward the elevators the receptionist pointed to. Her stomach tightened as the elevator doors closed and began rising. 20 floors. 30. 35. The doors opened onto the top floor. A woman in her 40s with dark hair and a tablet in hand greeted her with a warm but professional smile. "Rachel Carter," she said. "I'm Olivia Grant, Mr. Hayes' chief of staff." Rachel nodded awkwardly. "Hi." Olivia glanced down at Noah in the carrier. "And this must be the young man who caused all the trouble." Rachel smiled slightly. "This is Noah." Olivia gestured down the hallway. "Come with me. Daniel is still in meetings, but he asked me to show you something first." Rachel followed her through a hallway lined with glass offices. People worked quietly behind computers. No one stared at her. No one whispered. It felt strangely normal. They stopped outside a large conference room overlooking the city skyline. Olivia opened the door. Inside. Rachel stepped in. Then she stopped. Her hand covered her mouth. It was not a conference room. It was a nursery. A crib sat near the window. Soft rugs covered the floor. A changing table stood in the corner beside shelves filled with baby supplies. Toys, blankets, bottles. Everything. Rachel turned slowly toward Olivia. "What is this?" Quote. Olivia spoke gently. "Daniel wanted you to feel comfortable if you decided to work here." Rachel's chest tightened. "You built this for me?" Olivia shook her head. "He built it for Noah." Rachel stepped into the room slowly. Her fingers brushed the side of the crib. It was simple, warm, thoughtful, not expensive for the sake of it. Just careful. Someone had paid attention. Rachel swallowed hard. "Why?" Olivia met her eyes. "Because he knows what it feels like to walk in alone." Rachel didn't know what to say. 20 minutes later, she sat in a small meeting room holding a warm mug of coffee. Noah slept peacefully beside her. The door opened quietly. Rachel looked up. Daniel Hayes stepped inside. Seeing him in person felt different from seeing him in pictures. He was tall, calm, dressed simply in a black shirt with his sleeves rolled to his elbows. His eyes looked tired, but kind. "Rachel," he said. His voice was steady. "Thanks for coming." She stood awkwardly. "I wasn't sure if I should." Quote. "You came anyway," he replied. "That matters." He sat across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said something unexpected. "Before we talk about anything else, you owe me nothing." Rachel blinked. "This isn't charity," he continued, "and I'm not here to rescue you." She studied his face. "Then what is this?" Quote. Daniel slid a folder across the table. "An opportunity." Rachel opened it. Inside was a temporary job offer. 3 months. Internal audit support. Flexible hours. Remote work allowed. Rachel stared at the salary line. It was more than she had made in 6 months at her old job. Her voice came out quiet. "This is real?" "Yes." "And the nursery?" "Also real." Rachel glanced down at Noah sleeping peacefully, then back at Daniel. "Why me?" Daniel looked down for a moment before answering. "Because you didn't ask for more money." Rachel frowned slightly. "What?" "You asked for $50, he said. "Not rent, not a car, not a job." He leaned back slightly. "You asked for just enough to get your son through the night." Quote. Rachel felt her throat tighten. "And that told you something?" she asked. "It told me you're not the kind of person who cuts corners." She sat quietly. Daniel continued. "People like that are rare." He tapped the folder lightly. "Work 3 months. If it doesn't fit, you walk away." Rachel looked at the offer again. Her hands felt steady now. Finally, she nodded. "I'll take it." Daniel smiled. "Just a little. Good." Rachel showed up for her first official day the following Monday. Her hair was pulled back neatly. Noah rested in a gray sling against her chest. She expected whispers, side glances, but the receptionist greeted her warmly. "Welcome back, Rachel." Olivia met her near the elevator with coffee already in hand. "Noah's space is ready," she said. Rachel followed her down the hallway. Her office was small but bright. 2 monitors sat on a clean desk. Behind a glass partition was the nursery. Noah cooed happily on the rug, surrounded by toys. Rachel sat slowly in the chair. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. It had been over a year since she worked inside a system like this, but as she opened the internal audit software, something familiar stirred in her mind. Numbers, patterns, structure. Her brain woke up like an old machine starting again. She began reviewing vendor payments, cross-checking invoices, scanning transaction logs. An hour passed before she realized someone was standing outside her office. "Daniel." He knocked lightly. "May I?" She nodded. "It's your company." He stepped inside and glanced through the glass at Noah. "Settling in?" "So far," Rachel said. "I haven't broken anything." "Give it time." She smirked slightly before catching herself. Daniel looked at her screen. "You're already in vendor reconciliation. Seemed like a good place to start." He studied the numbers. "You found something?" Rachel hesitated. "I've only been here an hour, but yes." His eyebrow lifted. "What kind of something?" She turned the monitor slightly toward him. "These payments," she said. "Same vendor name appears multiple times. Is that unusual?" "Not by itself." Quote, Rachel pointed to the numbers, "but the amounts are always just under internal audit thresholds." Daniel's expression shifted slightly. "Meaning?" "Meaning someone designed them that way." Silence settled between them. Rachel leaned back slowly. "I could be wrong," she said. Daniel shook his head. "You're not." Rachel looked at him carefully. "You already suspected something." Daniel didn't answer right away. Finally, he said quietly, "I've seen the numbers drifting for months. Why didn't you investigate?" "I tried." He folded his arms. "But the people responsible for investigating report to the same department that approves these payments." Rachel felt the weight of that. "You think someone inside the company is stealing?" "I know they are." Rachel stared at the screen again. The numbers suddenly felt heavier. "So what do you want me to do?" Daniel's voice was calm. "Keep looking." "How deep?" "As deep as you can go." Rachel turned toward him. "You're asking me to investigate your own company." Daniel met her eyes. "I'm asking you to find the truth." Rachel studied him for a moment. Then she nodded. "All right." That afternoon, Rachel worked through lunch. She followed payment trails, cross-referenced vendor accounts, and eventually she found it. A name. A company that technically existed, but had no real employees, no real projects. Just payments, small ones, hidden in the noise. But when she added them up, her stomach tightened. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Gone. Rachel copied the data onto a secure drive. Then she messaged Daniel. "I need 5 minutes. It's important." Minutes later, she stood inside his office, overlooking the entire city. Daniel plugged in the drive and began scrolling through the files. His jaw tightened slightly. "You were right," he said quietly. Rachel crossed her arms. "Someone built a very careful machine." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "And now we know it exists." Rachel's voice softened. "Do you know who's behind it?" Quote, Daniel didn't answer right away. Then he opened a drawer and slid a file across the desk. Rachel opened it. Inside was a photo. A sharply dressed man in his mid-40s. Name printed beneath the image. Victor Hale, Chief Financial Officer. Rachel looked up slowly. "You think it's him?" Daniel's eyes were steady. I know it is. Rachel closed the folder carefully. Then proving it is going to be difficult. Daniel nodded. Very. Rachel sat back slightly. So what happens now? Daniel's voice was quiet. Now we find the crack in his system. Rachel looked down at the folder again, and for the first time since she sent that desperate text message, she realized something. Her life wasn't just changing, it was stepping into a fight she never expected to be part of, and the man who had answered her wrong number was now standing beside her in it. Rachel Carter didn't sleep much that night. The numbers she found inside Orion Biotech's system kept replaying in her mind. Small payments, hidden vendors, amounts just low enough to avoid attention. It wasn't sloppy, it was designed. And the man behind it was the company's chief financial officer, Victor Hale. The next morning, Rachel arrived early. Earlier than anyone else. The building was quiet when she stepped out of the elevator on the 37th floor. Noah slept peacefully in the nursery behind the glass wall of her office, while the city slowly woke up outside the tall windows. Rachel opened the audit system again. She wasn't looking for mistakes anymore. She was looking for patterns, and patterns always left fingerprints. An hour later, she found one, a device ID. Every payment approval came from a different employee login, different departments, different managers. But every single approval passed through the same device. Rachel leaned closer to the screen. Someone was using stolen credentials, ghost logins. The approvals looked real, because they technically were real, but they were all coming from the same machine. Her stomach tightened. That wasn't just theft. That was planning. Rachel copied the information into a secure folder. Then she sent a message. Daniel, I found something. 5 minutes later, she stood inside his office again. Daniel Hayes sat behind his desk, already reading the report she handed him. He didn't interrupt. He didn't ask questions. He just read. Finally, he leaned back slowly. You found the access point. Rachel nodded. Every fake approval routes through the same machine. Daniel's voice was quiet. That means Victor is running everything himself. Rachel folded her arms, or someone very close to him. Daniel looked toward the window. For months, I thought the company was leaking money. He looked back at her. But this isn't leaking. This is siphoning. Rachel nodded. A very careful siphon. Silence settled between them. Then Daniel spoke again. I'm bringing him in tomorrow. Rachel blinked. You're confronting him? I'm giving him a chance to explain. And if he lies? Quote, Daniel's eyes hardened slightly. Then we finish this. The meeting was scheduled for 10 the next morning. Rachel wasn't supposed to be in the room. Daniel insisted she stay in her office. But he didn't stop her from watching the security feed. At exactly 10 o'clock, the conference room door opened. Victor Hale walked in like a man who owned the building. Perfect suit, calm smile, confident steps. Daniel was already seated at the table. There was no handshake. Victor sat across from him. What's this about? He asked casually. Daniel's voice was calm. I've been reviewing our financial records. Victor nodded. Good. That's what a CEO should do. Daniel slid a folder across the table. A vendor called Trinox Solutions. Victor barely glanced at it. Doesn't sound familiar. Daniel leaned forward slightly. It should. You approved the payments. Victor smiled thinly. Then I'm sure there's a reason. Rachel leaned closer to her monitor. The tension in the room felt sharp even through the screen. Daniel spoke quietly. I know what you've been doing. Quote. Victor's smile faded just a little. Daniel continued. Shell vendors, ghost approvals, hidden transfers. Victor leaned back in his chair. You've been listening to your new accountant too closely. Rachel's stomach dropped. He knew. Daniel didn't react. Her name is Rachel. Victor chuckled. The single mom you rescued from poverty? Rachel clenched her fists. Daniel's voice remained steady. She found what everyone else missed. Victor leaned forward slowly. You think the board will believe her over me? Daniel's reply was simple. I don't need belief. He tapped the folder. "I have proof." Victor stood slowly. For a moment his expression changed. Not panic, not anger, just calculation. Then he laughed softly. "You really think this ends with me walking out?" Quote. Daniel stood too. "Yes." Victor looked at him carefully. "You've always been brilliant, Daniel." He adjusted his jacket. "But brilliance doesn't survive corporate politics." Victor walked toward the door. "Let's see how the board feels about this tomorrow." Then he left. Rachel sat frozen at her desk. The war had begun, but it didn't last long. 2 days later, the investigation exploded across every financial news outlet in the country. Federal auditors confirmed the data. Victor Hale had siphoned millions through fake vendors for nearly 2 years. The board had no choice. He was removed immediately. Charges followed. Rachel stood quietly in the nursery, watching Noah play with a stuffed fox when someone knocked on the door. Daniel stepped inside. He looked exhausted, but relieved. "It's over," he said. Rachel exhaled slowly. "Good." Daniel looked through the glass at Noah crawling across the rug. "He seems happy." Rachel smiled. "He likes this place." Daniel leaned against the doorway. "I wanted to thank you." Rachel shook her head. "You gave me the job. You saved my company." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a new employee badge. He handed it to her. Rachel looked down at it. Director of Internal Audit. Her name printed clearly beneath the title. Her eyes widened slightly. "That's permanent." "If you want it," Daniel said. Rachel glanced toward Noah, then back at him. "I do." Daniel smiled. "Just a little." 3 weeks later, Rachel walked into her first board meeting as the head of Internal Audit. Not a temporary worker. Not the woman who sent the wrong text message, but the person who had uncovered the truth. When the meeting ended, one of the board members stopped her in the hallway. "You did something rare," the older man said. Rachel tilted her head. "What's that?" "You did your job so well it forced everyone else to do theirs." Rachel smiled softly. "I wasn't trying to impress anyone." "What were you trying to do?" Rachel looked down the hallway toward the nursery. "Protect my son's future." That night, she stayed late finishing a final report. The office lights dimmed automatically as the building grew quiet. A voice spoke from the doorway. "Shouldn't you be home by now?" Rachel looked up. Daniel stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. She smiled. "You told me to rebuild the system." "And you did." He handed her the coffee. "Come on." "Where?" "Outside." They walked out of the building together into the cool night air. The city hummed softly around them. Rachel looked up at the skyline. "Do you ever think about how strange this all is?" Quote. Daniel glanced at her. "Which part?" "The part where my entire life changed because I typed one wrong number." Daniel smiled slightly. "I don't think it was the wrong number." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "No?" "No." He looked down the street for a moment. "I think it was the first right thing that happened in a long time." Rachel exhaled slowly. For once, she didn't argue. Months later, Rachel sat in her new apartment with Noah asleep beside her. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. It was a screenshot. The very first message she had ever sent him. "Ben, I'm sorry to bother you again. I need $50 for formula." Below it was his reply. "I think you meant to send that to someone else." Rachel laughed quietly. Then she typed back, "Do you still think it wasn't an accident?" A moment later, his reply appeared. "Sometimes the best things in life start with a mistake." Rachel looked over at Noah, sleeping peacefully, and for the first time in a long time, she believed it. If you believe stories still matter, go ahead and hit subscribe. Stories Beyond the Porch. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.